Welcome. The name's Fish, Goldfish, and if you want to check out this shaken but not stirred review, you're going to have to answer the countersign to who do Denise and Agnes party with? Close enough. You are authorized to check out Operation Stealth. Operation Stealth was developed by Delphine Software and published in 1990. And during this lovely, moody and animated intro, we find out that the top secret stealth fighter has been stolen. And it's up to our hero, John Glames, to get it back. Wait, John Glames? Yes, that is his name. If you happen to play it in most of the world, that is. As in the US, this got rebranded as James Bond: The Stealth Affair, and we will talk about that a little bit later on in the video. So while the US got that box art, over here we got this one instead, which I think is much cooler. And it was used across all the various editions of the game, with the Amiga and Atari being represented here, but you can also see it on the budget PC release that I also happen to have. Now inside the box we find the game on multiple floppy disks, and a booklet that provides some history and world building, as well as going over the gadgets that you'll find in the game, all while being nicely illustrated. But to find out how to play the game, you'll need to check out the reference manual, which is your typical multi-language, multi-platform fold-out. And obviously, the all-important copy protection. In the original release, it's this reflective board. But if you happen to get the budget release, you'd get this badly photocopied image instead. Which is a problem, as the game will show you the image on screen and then start flashing a square, and you'll have to select the colour that matches that square. The reflective version isn't too bad, but it's still quite easy to get mixed up on the colours. And also note that some of the names don't even match up, but the budget version is so much harder to read, to the point where it would normally take me a few attempts to launch the game back in the day. Which is so annoying when you have to sit through that animated text every single time. After being informed that the stealth has been found in the Republic of Santa Paragua, we fly over there to meet our first real challenge: getting out of the airport. Which, isn't that always the way? But it does give us a nice little area to get used to the controls, as you will have to use pretty much all the features of the Cinema Q engine just to get past this guard. And to show you the game means business, you can fail this, with a game over being your reward. I wouldn't be surprised if this is where most people's attempts at this game started and ended. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on this puzzle than I'll do anything else in the game, as this is a review and not a walkthrough or a long play, obviously. So the first thing you'll need to do is inspect the vending machine, which does this cool picture-in-picture view of the coin return. But we're going to be needing this coin so we can get a newspaper. And where else are we going to go with a newspaper in hand and after a long flight? We're off to the bathroom. Don't wait for me. Once we find ourselves nicely hidden away in a stall, we can look at the paper, because we're going to need to give the right passport to the guard, as our American one, well, that doesn't go down all that well. The Cinema Q engine is fully mouse-driven, with a right-click bringing up the context menu, that will allow you to inspect your inventory, examine items in the world, as well as speak to people, and obviously use items together to operate them. Now left-clicking on any of these will let you interact with the world. But if you want to use something in your inventory, then you have to click the right mouse button, and that will bring up your list of items. And using this, we can then open up our fully stocked briefcase. And I have to say, this tripped me up for quite a while. But with it open, we can now take some of our items, including some cash, as well as open up a hidden compartment, and we can find a blank passport and a printer. And from here, it's a simple task of using the passport with the printer, making sure you select the hole and not the printer itself, and then we can select the right country and print it off. And you can now hand that over to the guard and get past the arrival gate. But before you can leave this area, you need to talk to this person. And I really like the fact that she leans forwards when you get close. It's a nice touch. And not seen all that often in the rest of this game. Now so far we've been using the Amiga version, as that's what I grew up with. But from now on we'll be using a mix of various editions, with the borders around the side letting you know what we're currently seeing. But to put it briefly, the PC version has more colours, the Amiga version has the best music, and the Atari edition sits somewhere between them. The game will continue to make you work to get out of the airport though, as you have to grab the right bag from the carousel and then listen to a message on an electric razor. And then you get all the thrill of waiting for a taxi. To meet up with our informant, we're going to have to solve a bit of stubborn adventure game logic, as you can only use coins to get the flower. The florist won't take any of your bench of notes. This then leads us through a series of events that eventually will get us captured. And then, in the best tradition of secret agent fiction, we get left in a cave with no way out. So we're going to have to make one, even if it's another example of obtuse adventure game logic, as we can quickly find a pickaxe, and then a wall with a slight breeze coming through it. But do you use the pickaxe on the wall? No, of course not. You just have to operate the pickaxe around about the right area, and do it multiple times. And if that wasn't annoying enough, the game shows us one of its other party pieces next, the action sequence. As puzzling can only be so much of a game. And here we have to swim underwater between air pockets to make it to the exit. The first two screens aren't too bad, but it's the last one that comes right down to the wire. But if you get that right, then we'll end up back in town. And we've decided it's time to go back to our hotel room. Now if you tried doing this before, the person at the reception desk will tell you to, well, simply bugger off. So why anyone would think it would be fine to do this now, I have no idea. But it also doesn't tell us which room is ours either, so after checking all 3 floors and finding the only one that opens, we get to meet the love interest of the story, who accuses us of doing something nasty. But before we find out what that is, we get interrupted by someone that looks, well, exactly like us. And we end up getting captured again. And seeing second time's the charm, they decide to get rid of us by throwing us into the water. And at this point, we have a problem, as the item we need to get out of this situation was being sold on the beach. And to be able to buy said item, we needed to exchange more of our money for coins. But at that point in the game, we don't have any money anymore. It got lost at some point in the adventure, so we've effectively dead-ended ourselves. You really need to save often in this game, as there are a few places where you can mess up. And it does feel like this was all about trying to extend the runtime of the game, as if you know what you're doing, you can complete it in little over an hour. As we exchange our bench of notes twice to get 2 sets of coins, I think it'd be interesting to talk about the few versions of the game, as the system manual will let you know what you're currently playing. And I'm mostly mentioning this as the budget release was the only way to get the most up-to-date version, and this seems to be a bit smoother when playing on an Amiga 500 or 500 Plus. Now what you may or may not want to avoid is one of the pirated Amiga copies, as they decided it would be fun to add something extra. A talky version of the game.
Excellent, sir. The vacation in Los Angeles was exquisite.
That would run if you happen to have 1 megabyte of RAM. But how do you fit all that in when you're still on the same number of discs? Well, you use Amiga Say.
Devastating fire and unpredictable to rather. Exactly. And the steel is even more what the public saw was only an obsolete version.
And I honestly don't recommend it. Outside of it being a fun novelty, obviously, as it does slow the entire game down as you have to wait for the voices to finish. But it is cool the hackers decided to add it, even if they say you shouldn't use it either. And after redoing all those previous steps and having that nerve-wracking sequence when the computer takes over, we arrive at Exposition Hut. That can be found in the middle of Backstory Jungle. And good god, did they really want to make her a Bond girl, didn't they? Who turns out to be related to the President, who has started to act very odd. So there has to be a liberation force, and we are now part of it. And our first act is acting as a magician's assistant to get into the palace. And this is all cutscene, with no interactive elements at all. Which is a shame, as this could have been a fun adventure game moment. But instead of that, Julia gets captured, leading us on to a maze. This is the second action part of the game, where we have to collect a key and then make it to the door that shows up, all while avoiding the gun-toting baddies. But thankfully, they are as dumb as rocks, so you can easily block them in with movable walls. But their movement is random, and thus unpredictable, and they will walk through walls that are currently moving, so it becomes so much harder than it really should be. And you don't do this just once either, no. You have multiple mazes to solve, because that's what you really wanted in your spy thriller. This is a bit of a low point in the game, not the lowest though, as saves coming your way through is the only way to do it. After all that, we finally get another small chance to do a bit of adventure gaming, as we have to find a safe and then use the safe cracker to get the documents. Then it's right back into the mini games, as we have 2 jet ski sequences coming up, where we'll get saved by the SS plot corrector. Who helpfully points us in the right direction, which is under the sea, where avoiding sharks is the aim of the game. But you should also swim around a bit. As you see this clump of seaweed, well, it's some of the most important seaweed ever in a game, as it's carrying the weight of the world on it, which is a random bit of elastic. That will end up being the difference between the world being nuked or not. After swimming past and then using an underwater palm tree, we get captured again. This is the third time, Glames. What are you doing? And this gives the real villain of the game, Dr. Y, a chance to monologue and explain his terrible fiendish plan. And then he obviously leaves you in a cage, which is going to plunge you into a pool of piranhas. Because those other two convoluted attempts at killing us worked out so well. But when trying to escape, the more straightforward route isn't actually the correct one, as that will get you captured again and you'll be instantly killed this time. Well done, guards. Instead, we have to head into a vent and do some more maze puzzles. And this time we get to see even less of the screen at once, and have to deal with what must be absolutely massive rats. Look at the size of these things. Dr. Y should really be asking where his budget for exterminators are going. And this is the lowest point of the game. It's so annoying. Though thankfully it is the last of the mini games. And before we enter the final stretch of the game, let's talk about that US only James Bond The Stealth Affair. As this starts off with the new Blink and You'll Miss It title screen, and then continues with a reworked translation. So it's not just a simple name swap as you might have thought. And the CIA director mentions that you've been loaned from MI5. It even mentions Q being the source of your gadgets, and some of the lines of text have even been touched up so they make a little bit more sense. Even the bench of notes is now currency. Now I can't complain too much about the original translation, as for the most part it works, but it does feel like the US one is a little bit more complete. So it is an interesting version to play if you can find it, even if it won't give you a completely different experience. With the mazes done, all that's left is to get the clothes off a minion, and don't forget to tie and gag him up, or he will alert everyone else. Or at least that's the excuse we're going to give. And then we get to do some honest to goodness pointing and clicking. Yeah, some of the bits are complete moon logic, and you have some very tight timing windows for some of the sections. But it is back to where it should have been for most of the game. This is far more enjoyable than those jet skis, or the mazes. You even give someone orders that they have to go out and buy Delphine games, as well as having to get fingerprints from a glass. It's also a great reveal when the whole island rises to the surface of the water and then the stealth fighter takes off like something out of Thunderbirds. And also don't forget the most important and well hidden item in the game that you have to use at the very end or it will end quite badly. And to find out where exactly you use it and how the game ends, well, you'll have to go play it yourself. Or watch a long play. I know that's how I managed to solve some of the puzzles. But I have to say this is a bit of an interesting game. It's a shame it has one too many issues and the controls can be clunky at times. And those maze minigames, well, they can get into every single bin and then take themselves out to the garbage truck, because I don't want to see them again. Plus the story is a little bit of a mixed bag, with having some really weird moments of humour that just doesn't fit well with the tone of the rest of the game. But when it does act like a proper adventure game, it's pretty good. It's just a shame there wasn't more of it, as it feels like there's whole sections that might have been cut out, that really would have helped round out that plot a little bit more. And if you do want to play the game, with all the caveats already mentioned, then you're going to have to track down a second-hand copy, as it's not been re-released on any of the digital stores. But breaking news just in, Blaze have announced an evercade Delphine cart, with Operation Stealth being on it, along with Another World, Flashback and Future Wars. Where's my Cruise for a Corpse? Now these appear to be the Amiga versions based on the trailer, but how well that's going to play with the D-pad I'm not sure. Some of those time sections are going to be fun. And if we're lucky, this might inspire someone else to release ScumVM wrapped versions in other stores, as that would be a much better way to play them. And I think that might be a good place to end things. So if you played this game in the past and had good or bad memories of it, I'd love to hear what you thought about it in the comments. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was some huge rats, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching. I'm hoping that if you got this far into the video, you enjoyed it. And if you did, you might want to consider using the buttons just under the video to let YouTube know. Or you might want to check out some of the other reviews that I've done, as there should be 2 on screen right now. Or if you'd like to chat with like-minded individuals, then you can join my Discord. It's a lot of fun there.